Let me begin by saying that I'm genuinely moved by all the feedback from these videos. The comments and private messages and thank yous have been truly overwhelming. It's clear that this message needed to be heard and that this isn't just a personal thing, this is about principle, and what we're doing here is the right thing to do. So this is a response to the second video released by the snake and crane oil salesman. As you've probably seen, there's the usual tactics of victimhood and flooding the platforms with the videos to try and control the narrative. I don't need to go through that all over again. I explained it in the previous video and you're well aware of these tactics. In this video, we'll be focusing on all the claims made about Emei 12 Zhang and the connections or the supposed ones with the Wing Chun system. Before we continue, let me just introduce you to another tactic used by this gentleman, and that being lying by omission. Instead of answering a question directly, he'll drop out half-truths, throw out vague connections, and then say phrases like, do the math. But when you do the math, things don't add up. So what was in question was this person's level of experience and knowledge on a Qigong set known as the Emei 12 Zhang. Apparently this gentleman's level of knowledge and skill of the Emei 12 Zhang means that he can make particular claims. His evidence of this is him training the Emei with his friend Sifu Kleber, and a picture from his book showing some notes, and them training in Australia somewhere. With this information, the listener is then asked to do the math. I mean, if that's all we're taking as evidence here, then here we are. Here's a picture of me with my training partner in Brazil, complete with notes, learning capoeira from a bunch of maestros. Yeah, of course, we never done that, but those who trust me are going to think that I did. Some things you may have missed as he expertly weaved his way through his explanation about his experience with the Emei is: who did he train with? How long did he train with them? What level did he get to? And where is his picture with the seafood that he learnt from? Instead, he explains that his experience is actually the experience of his training partner, Kleber. So him and Kleber trained this Emei 12 Zhang together. There is a picture of Kleber with his 14th generation teacher, and then says that those two trained together all the time. Well, you both lived in different countries. How much training did you do together then? How much do you still do together? How deeply did you go into the system? Seeing as though Kleber is actually the one with a connection to the Emei 12 Zhang teacher, it's probably more accurate to say that Kleber was actually teaching you the Emei 12 Zhang. One of the other claims made by this gentleman, that on the island, that art trained there are preserved faithfully and without any mixing of any other styles. Well, that's not exactly true, as the Snakio one's own 1700s Wing Chun system is actually an amalgamation of many other lineages put together and just bolted on. Not only that, he's taken things from other styles, other martial arts as well, such as Sistema. Most notably, the throwing power that he advocates so much is actually taken from a particular person called Val Ryazanov. He used to live in London. So this tutorial was given to him by his ex-student, and if you watch his explanations, especially his early ones, they're almost verbatim what they were on the online tutorial of Val Ryazanov's. Also, how can one really teach and preserve these traditional martial arts properly when they have barely any experience or training in them? This individual often just does a few lessons, if any, meets the particular sifus that they're interested in at that moment in time, does the Bai Si, makes all sorts of proclamations, and then goes about his way professing to have great knowledge and deep insight into the style he just attached himself to. Is this really the best way to preserve this precious knowledge? And as usual, there was the passive-aggressive digs we've all come to know and love from this person. This time around, it was statements such as, anyone with any experience in the Emei, UK San or White Crane styles would be able to see the relevant bits of information he was trying to connect the dots with. Well, I don't profess to be any kind of expert in the UK San lineage. However, I have trained it a little bit. I also have interviewed and know many people who are established members within that lineage. But what's strange to me is that this person claims to have this deep level of experience and knowledge and to have completed the UK San system. For if you read his book, there are two gentlemen that he primarily learnt the UK San system from. Now, the thing is, I've interviewed both of these gentlemen and they say the exact same thing, that there was barely any training done, only a few lessons at best, and that to call the Snakio one an expert in the UK San lineage would be far from the truth. Now, in this case, you may say, it's my word against theirs. No, it's not. You can just private message me and I can give you more details. Or if you're a keen researcher, you can take a look at his book where he gives the details of who he supposedly learnt from and ask one of them. I'm sure one of these individuals will be incredibly animated in his response, in his thoughts about this particular individual who professes to have this knowledge of UK San and how much he learnt. The next claim is about this deep level of knowledge and training in the art of white crane. He attempts to give weight to his claims of authority by attaching himself to the world famous Lei Gong of the white crane system. Now, Lei Gong is an amazing teacher, Sifu in person. His skill and knowledge of the white crane system truly is second to none. I know this because I was lucky enough to take lessons from him and do an interview with him. His skill is truly amazing. He's a living treasure in the Kung Fu world. I really enjoyed the system and wanted to continue my studies, so I asked Lei Gong Sifu where I can continue them in Europe. He gave me a list of instructors and people worth going to see, and guess who wasn't even on them? I found this interesting and then decided to dig a little deeper and asked Lei Gong Sifu, why is the snake crane oil salesman not on this list? And that's because he didn't even recognize him as any level of student worth going to see for an instruction. Well, that doesn't seem to be in line with the narrative that is being pushed by this individual. So appealing to authority on this one, you cannot do. Third are the assertions you made about the Emei 12 Zhang. Once again, you display your absolute lack of knowledge of what I have trained and what I know. Whilst you take lessons from your friend who is a student of somebody 14th generation within this lineage, I take direct instruction of Jim Roselando. Okay, with the measuring contest out of the way, let's address some of the claims the snake and crane oil salesman has made about white crane, Emei, and their connection to Wing Chun Kyun. Yes, you have been writing about the connection of Emei to Wing Chun for X amount of years, repeating ad nauseum in your book, on the forums, and everywhere else that would listen. However, just because you repeat something that lacks factual evidence doesn't make it true. Moreover, this connection between the Emei and the Wing Chun is not even something that you made, but one Mr. Hendrik Santo. You didn't discover this independently at all. So much for giving credit where credit is due. The next claim is about the 10th set of the Emei 12 Zhang and it being fused with the white crane to make what we now understand as Wing Chun. Again, this is yet another assertion made ad nauseum in the attempt that if they just keep saying it over and over again, it will suddenly become fact. I mean, that's certainly one way of doing it. The other way is to produce some actual evidence that can be critically analysed and allow people to come to a logical conclusion. Absolutely none of this is done, and using your own book as a reference, that's not how it works. In fact, any amount of critical thinking or evaluation will immediately show that this claim is pure nonsense. If one knows anything about the Emei system, it knows that you need to go through a sequential process. You can't just go straight to the 10th set. Knowing that, why would one want to get the 10th set, foregoing the other 9, and then somehow fuse that with the foundational set of another system in order to make a new system? That makes totally no sense. Where is the logic? You need to develop the attributes of one set in order to do the next, and so on and so forth. Anyone professing to have a level of experience within this system would know that. Another thing the snake and crane oil salesman likes to say is that there's so much evidence. You know, if you believe it or don't believe it, it's totally up to you. Well, where exactly is this evidence? It's not in your book. You certainly haven't produced anything online, and not in any kind of discourse. Just because you say something has evidence doesn't mean it has evidence. And once again, you can't use your own book as a reference for evidence. Moreover, those who have the book, you can just go through and then just highlight how much evidence is actually given, how many references. It becomes very clear that somebody is really stretching what it means to have lots of evidence. Going forward, it's probably best for him to say he has many beliefs, not lots of evidence. That way, he can remove himself from any discourse requiring any kind of critical analysis. Anyone going through his research can quickly see that it's mainly beliefs driven by confirmation bias and fitting square pegs into round holes. That brings us on to the next claim, being the Tai Chi circling hand, and it being akin to the Hun Sao in Wing Chun and the Lap Sao. This is also an interesting one and displays this person's lack of knowledge and actual understanding of these other systems he tries to connect with. For instance, closing the hand by curling the fingers in sequentially isn't a universally Wing. Before we go any further, I think it's important that we hear from other voices apart from mine, because this isn't really that personal for me. It's not about opinion or ego. It's about facts, experience, and integrity. So when you hear information and facts that come from people other than myself, from other experienced practitioners, it becomes quite clear that this is a shared reality that certain other people don't want exposed. To that end, I think it's only right that you hear from Jim Roselando directly. He's not only a highly respected Gulao Wing Chun practitioner and Emei 12 Zhang practitioner, but he's also the original source for the Emei Wing Chun connection that others now try to claim as their own.
My background, I'm a Gulo representative from the Feng family. I'm a direct student of the recently deceased Master Sifu Henry Moy and founder of the Gulo Boxing Association. So I teach locally and do seminars and online and things like this, and also write. I've been a contributing author for the Wing Chun Illustrated as well. I have a column in there since the founding of the magazine. With regards to my Qigong, I'm a direct student of Grandmaster Fu Wei Zhang from the Emei system. He is the gatekeeper, the 13th generation successor of the Emei system. And he studied directly with Grandmaster Juzan. And Juzan was, at that time, the head of Chan Buddhism throughout China. So Master Fu became the 13th generation successor of that style. And I was fortunate to study Emei with him. Good. Yeah, after I heard about that theory, I kind of went nuts with it. I went to the Emei headmaster who happened to be coming to Boston, and I wrote articles and I was in the forums chatting, and yeah, it's because of my efforts, it kind of went mainstream. Yeah, I was probably the main person. And if you were going online and you were looking at different articles and things like this, I was out there like, this sounds logical. And, I had my reference points and I'm saying, maybe it's true. Maybe it's possible. So that I don't believe that any longer. Yeah, and the reason I don't believe that any longer is because of the information that I've seen from the other arts, from the red boats and things like this that we've continued to find, and because of the background of the initial research that it needed, it had some flaws. So today I don't believe that. It's just not as significant as we thought. It's not 100% lines other than one, and so when you have 18 lines or something like that out of like, again, it was mostly section one, not two, three, and four. The poetry from section one was the one that had like, again, I think it was section four had two lines, section three had none, section two had two lines, and then section one probably had like 14 lines that had similarities in there. I thought that was 14 lines accurate, and it wasn't. It was one accurate, and then there was words sparsed out, you know, and so that's why. Yeah. And of course, after seeing the Long San Folk and then the other styles, and it's like they're not really that much different than what we're doing, just the choreography. Well, according to the Emei history, it's 800 years. So unless Christ was born not that long ago, maybe not. I don't know, but it's supposed Bayun, the White Cloud, was supposedly the founder. I have a sketch of him somewhere hanging on my wall downstairs, and but Bayun was the founder of the art. So he's talking about some of the this snake slide worm move. That's got it, it's not what they think. So, for example, it's called snake arm silkworm palm. Okay, the silkworm palm is when the fingers are crawling like this. So every bone in your hand is moving, every bone. So the silkworm, if you can do it correctly, you won't curl your fingers. But it's every bone is moving in my hands at all times. The snake arm is the same. Shoulder, elbow, wrist. While your hand is moving, every joint is moving in your arm and things like this. The snake arm silkworm palm is the first thing done in all the forms except for maybe one or two. That theory of the snake sliding, worm crawling, it came from just the person from San Jose or something like this, and these guys are still using that terminology. In the small form, when you start on one side, you do all this stuff, you come back down, that trace, and then you come back here, and then you do the other side. So now, what do you look like? It looks like the opera salute. So there's this is it must be the opera salute. Okay, here we have the opera salute into the hero, and versus in this form, you start with the left hand, it comes back to here, then you come up, you do the right side, and then you end up doing all this stuff. So how similar is it? It's just an opera salute. And if the Cho family were on the opera, and their ancestor was on the opera, he learns from the opera teacher. Why? Of course, he's going to have an opera salute. You know what I mean? But the Tai Chi circles, even though the fingers go outward, similar to like the Lopsao, it's not the same. So what happens is like this. In the, like, for example, two areas of the small form, or I'll show you, for example, if I'm here and I trace the Tai Chi circle like this, okay, I form a mudra and I place it down over here. It's not like I'm grabbing something. There's an actual mudra here, okay? Then in this part is actually inside the heaven form as well as small form in other sections. So when I'm moving to the side, so like when you're holding your arms outward in that one of those sections, your arm, it's gonna go like this. Trace the Tai Chi circle and hold the egg when your hand is up like this. And so the inside is hollow. And then you do your movements, draw back, inward. But it's not a lopsaw. This is very specific. Thumb up or to here to the mudra. That's trace the Tai Chi circle with the hand. Yeah, it's not lopsaw. And even in Gulo Wing Chun, the reason they think there's this outside lopsaw in Gulo Wing Chun is because they've seen Feng Chun or somebody else do it. But if you go back and to the earlier generation, from the first generation, like from Dat and this other lineages that didn't leave the village, the guys who left the village interacted with people in Foshan. So if you look at Chun Suk, Feng Chun's lineage, Feng Chun, when he does something, maybe you'll see him come out up and down, up and down. He does all this kind of stuff, and then he does this thing. That's not part. That's added in by later generations, like Feng Chun himself or Mai Sigong, Feng Ju, and people who went out and they interacted with that. And it's if you look at the early generation 12 form, you won't see it. You won't see it.
If you've reached the end of this video and it hasn't dawned on you yet, the manipulation the snake crane oil salesman has subjected you to, then maybe you've been conditioned to follow instead of question. However, if you're still thinking critically, if you're still capable of discernment, then you already know what game is being played here. This isn't about ego or drama, rather facts and the truth. And remember, energy may never lie, but Snakio always will.